Hey guys, Chris from Drift Outfitters here, and today we're going to tie the rolled muddler. Now before you close the video, because you're too intimidated to tie a muddler, don't, because this is a very simple take on the classic pattern, and in my view actually a more effective one. So I think everyone's familiar with the muddler. This one looks a little different, a little messier frankly, but what it does a great job of is keeping a really nice slim profile. So if you look how this will slick down in the water, that's a great imitation of a little pin fry or just very small minnow species. And it has a nice translucency to it as well. It's tied quite sparsely. It's going to let some light through and again aid in that sort of look there. You can tie this with or without the bead head. I like it with the bead head. Yeah, your call there, and change it up based on your circumstances. For the hook, this is a size 10 streamer hook. This is a Dohiku HDS size 10. You could tie this shorter shank nymph hook if you want a little bit of smaller profile. I like the streamer hook, and I like to tie this in fairly small sizes. Nothing really bigger than 8, 10, 12 I find is kind of the magic spot you want to be at there. And the bead that we have on here, this is just a brass bead in gold in an 1/8 of an inch size. I don't find there's much need to use say a tungsten bead on this. You could if you wanted, but I do like a little bit of weight on there at least. And for thread, I've just got, this is a 10/0 Veevus and a light cahill. So we'll just start that thread just behind the bead here. And you'll notice I'm not attaching any lead wire or anything like that. You could put just a couple of wraps on behind the bead and snug it up right into the bead, but what I find is that it does increase the diameter of the tying surface quite a bit, and when you're spinning your deer hair at the end, the last stage there, it can make things just a little trickier overall. So I opt out of that, and I just put on a few extra wraps behind the bead here to sort of keep it from sliding back too much. It's still a little loose, but it'll firm up as we get further forward in this fly. So to start off, I'm just going to take wraps rearward down towards the bend of the hook here. They don't have to be perfect, but roughly touching turns is good. And for the tail on this, we're going to be using, this is a barred mallard flank. Nothing fancy, just the stuff you get in the big bulk bags. Doesn't have to be the greatest quality that you use for like larger sculpin patterns or anything. We're just going to be using some fibers off the side here. This is the natural color. You could use dyed stuff too if you want to mix it up. Now for the tail, we really don't need many fibers. I'm just looking for maybe between 10 to 15 fibers. So, and they're pretty slim, so it won't look like much even with that count. So we'll just pluck those off the side there. I'm not too concerned that those tips aren't perfectly lined up. Again, this fly's kind of straggly by nature there. And as the name would imply, all I'm going to do is I'm just going to kind of roll up these fibers a little bit. And what that does is it encourages them to splay out just a little bit and flow more freely rather. For length, anywhere between, you could go on the shorter side, a half hook shank length up to maybe a full shank length. I like the full shank length myself, something just a little longer. And we'll just catch that clump in off the bend there. Now we'll take wraps forward, just open turns, to bind that down to the hook shank to keep a nice level platform. Now for the body on this, we're going to be using a tinsel, in this case a gold holographic mylar. This is a large size from Veevus. Use whatever you like. I like to stick with more of the natural tones for this fly, so silvers, golds, maybe a copper, something like that. No rules though. I'll just catch a length of that in up toward the front of the body and take wraps rearward to cover that up. I'll take my thread back up. Like so. And you could put a layer of super glue down here if you wanted for extra durability. I don't find it's necessary. All I'm going to do is make tight turns up the body here, back toward the bead. And really the name of the game with this fly is keeping things really thin and sparse. Again, this is a great pattern for your really small fry and baitfish. So no need to go crazy adding bulk and tapering things out here. Just really nice and thin is the aim. So we'll trim that off. I've got a couple extra, just little butt ends of that mallard here. You can trim those, cover them up with some thread. Tidy that up a bit. And then for the wing, I think a lot of people get hung up on this with muddlers because they're worried about mounting a slip wing on this. All we're going to do is the exact same thing as the tail. Just grab that feather, rip off a little bit of a larger clump. I'm not sure how many fibers that is, maybe even up all the way 20 or 30, but maybe about a 1/2 inch of stem, stem along here. Same thing, peel them off. Just kind of roll them up in your fingers, splay the fibers out a bit, like so. And you can see it's very thin, there's not a lot to this. And then I'm just going to line it up roughly to the length of the tail. Keeping it on top, a couple good tight turns there, and there you go. That's your wing. Simple as that. Trim off the excess there. And frankly, that'd be a good fishing fly in its own right, but we are going to add a little bit of a color to this in the form of some deer body hair. This is a bleached sort of ginger color. You can use natural too. And I'm going to take a fairly sparse clump, maybe, I don't know, 20, 25 fibers. Nothing too crazy there. And I'm not really going to worry about stacking these things. What I am going to do is get some of that underfur out of there. So you can just pluck it out, or if you have a comb handy, makes things a little bit easier. You could just run that through there a couple times. Take some of that fuzz out of there. Now for the tips, I want them to be maybe slightly more aligned than this. So what I will do, I'll pull out the very shortest fibers, usually only a few there. And maybe if there's a couple really long fibers, you can just pluck them out. Oops, there we go. Like so. So you've got a fairly sparse clump of deer hair here. And this collar we want actually to sort of mix into the body. So I almost go basically as long as the hook for my collar. So all the way back to the bend here. Now on a regular muddler that might be an issue. It would sort of cover up the entire body. There would be nothing but deer hair, but because this is so sparse, this really just adds to a little bit of the taper of the fly. And it's not going to conceal anything too badly. So I like a little bit of a longer collar on these. And you can spin this or you can just tie it on top. Frankly, I don't think there's a wrong way. If you want to just tie it straight on top, go for it. One tight wrap, a couple more through, that's fine. If you want to spin it a little bit, you can do that too. This sparse a clump won't spin perfectly, but get one soft wrap on and then tighten down and just kind of let that carry around. Like say, the sparser clumps don't really spin all that well, so if you sort of back off in the tension and then tighten back up, that'll ease it around. A couple more tight wraps. Bring your thread in front. We'll throw on a quick whip finish. Like so. And then we just have to trim that. And you can see this is crazy sparse. There's very little to it. That's the idea. So when I'm trimming, what I like to do is sort of use the bead as a guide. Get the scissors sort of on top of that bead and just trim back on a very slight angle, maybe a 30-degree angle or so. Now I'm trying just to cut the butt ends of deer hair here. I want to try to avoid cutting too many of those tips that my collar is made of. I can try and separate them here, pull them out a little bit. And like I say, it looks kind of silly. It looks almost too sparse to work, but that's the idea. It's just this super thin profile. It has, a good bit of movement because you haven't overdressed it, and it has that nice translucency to it. So just to finish up, what you can do, grab a bit of head cement. I just sort of put right on those butt ends there and let it seep down to the base. And that is your rolled muddler. Enjoy.